I think that this really has to be cleared up before one can see a new Bulgaria.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're examining our picks for the most terrible operations conducted by the Soviet Union's security agency from 1954 until 1991. Of course, these are just the ones we know about.
They noticed he'd meet a Russian, and then there'd be a deposit. He'd meet him, then there'd be a deposit. I said, well, something's wrong here.
Bugging a whole hotel.
Now I lay me down to sleep. Pray the Lord my soul to keep.
When you check into a hotel, you're likely assuming that you're not being secretly monitored in your room. Yet, if you were a guest at the Sokos Hotel Viru in Tallinn, Estonia during the Soviet era, your deeds may have been recorded. The hotel's 23rd floor held a secret KGB room that took note of the goings-on in 60 rooms and the restaurant with listening devices. The USSR had controlled Estonia since the year 1940, and the KGB didn't leave the hotel until Estonia's independence in 1991. In 1994, the secret listening room was discovered. Since then, the hotel has converted it into a museum where people can explore its espionage history.
Sometimes it's nice to know what they're talking about.
I don't care what they're talking about. All I want is a nice fat recording.
Targeting writers. The KGB targeted many writers for perceived dissidence, censoring their work and sending some to labor camps. Andrei Sinayevsky and Yuli Daniel are well-known examples. Both were Soviet writers who published novels in the West under pseudonyms, shining a light on the harsh realities of living in the USSR. After the KGB discovered their real identities, they arrested both in 1965, resulting in an infamous show trial as they were charged with anti-Soviet agitation and propaganda. Unlike similar trials at the time, Sinayevsky and Daniel both pleaded not guilty. However, both were sentenced to labor camps, Sinayevsky getting 7 years and Daniel receiving 5 years. Sexpionage.
Just sit at the bar. He sits at the same table overlooking the restaurant. You will stand out from the sort of women who tend to go there. I'm certain he will initiate contact.
During the Cold War, the KGB used sexpionage, deploying female swallows and male ravens to seduce targets. One notable case in the 1950s involved Maurice Dejean, French ambassador to the Soviet Union and a close ally of French President Charles de Gaulle. The KGB used actress Larissa Kronberg to seduce Dejean, luring him into a trap.
Inside this room, the KGB placed a listening device, which continued working for years. In the 60s, intelligence agencies would recruit sex spies made up of ordinary women.
Kronberg's fake husband burst in, attacked him, and staged a scandal, leading Dejean to seek help from a Soviet friend who secretly worked for the KGB. This gave the Soviets substantial leverage over him. In 1964, Dejean was fired after the British discovered the plan from defector Yuri Krotkov and informed the French.
For the deception to be complete, you must hold nothing back. Nothing. Understand?
The assassination of Lev Ribet. Writer and politician Lev Ribet served as deputy prime minister and later acting prime minister of Ukraine. However, he was arrested in 1941 by the Gestapo and sent to a Nazi concentration camp. After the war, Ribet focused on writing about Ukrainian nationalism and anti-communism, bringing him into conflict with the USSR, who occupied Ukraine at the time. In 1957, while in Munich, West Germany, Ribet was approached by KGB agent Bohdan Stashinsky, who sprayed the writer with a poison gas, killing him. In 1959, Stashinsky used the same method to assassinate Ribet's friend Stepan Bandera. The agent would later fall in love with an East German woman, leading to the KGB spying on him before he defected in 1961. Infiltrating the FBI.
I'm not a spy.
Big day at FBI counterintelligence.
Yes, it was.
Just 3 years into his FBI career, Robert Hanssen contacted the Soviet Union and offered to spy against the U.S. From 1979 to 2001, with some breaks, he sold thousands of classified documents to the KGB and its successors, exposing U.S. intelligence operations and compromising agents. The FBI spent $7 million to acquire KGB files from defector Alexander Shebakov, ultimately leading to Hanssen's arrest.
He communicated with the Russians in writing.
This is a copy of one of his actual letters sent in 1985 to his handler, Victor Cherkashin. Soon I will send a box of documents to Mr. Degtiar.
In 2002, he was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms. He died in 2023. Meanwhile, the KGB had also infiltrated the CIA with Aldrich Ames, who began spying for them in 1985. Aldrich was caught in 1994 and sentenced to life imprisonment.
Ames was sentenced to life in prison, and he's currently in a medium security prison in Indiana.
Operation Cedar Preparations. While this covert mission thankfully never came to be, the scale at which this plan was coordinated and organized is undeniably terrifying. During the Cold War, the KGB plotted to interrupt the United States' power supply through the destruction of key oil pipelines, major dams, and the Port of New York. The preparations for Operation Cedar were allegedly carried out over a span of 13 years from 1959 through 1972.
What's the next move when you don't know what the game is?
The level and quantity of intelligence gathered for this operation exhibits just how dedicated the KGB had been to its follow-through. Clearly, had it occurred, it would have been a massive calamity. Crushing the Hungarian Revolution of 1956.
He had wanted a less hardline version of communism, but Moscow's tanks crushed the revolt and he was arrested and hanged on the 16th of June in 1958.
Imre Nagy was a Hungarian communist who worked as an informer for the NKVD secret police, a predecessor of the KGB. He later rose through the ranks of the Hungarian government, becoming prime minister in 1953. His attempts to reform Stalinist policies led to his ouster in 1955 under pressure from Soviet-aligned hardliners. During the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, Nagy was reinstated, pledged to make democratic reforms, and withdrew Hungary from the Warsaw Pact. In response, the Soviet Union invaded, crushing the revolution with KGB support. Nagy sought asylum, but was arrested, secretly tried, and executed for treason in 1958.
And so, for us, it's all over. Yet in a way, it's only the beginning. Communist regimes are a kind of constant civil war between the rulers and the people.
A brutal solution to a hostage crisis.
Terry Anderson's exit marks the end of the American hostage ordeal in Lebanon.
All of us had a lot of problems when we came home.
During the Lebanese Civil War, 104 foreigners were taken hostage between 1982 and 1992. In 1985, 4 Soviet diplomats were kidnapped in Beirut by the Islamic Liberation Organization, ILO. Days later, one of the captives was killed. But a month later, the remaining 3 were unexpectedly released.
The meetings were fruitless, and it seems that at this stage the kidnappers only wanted to hand back 2 hostages, keeping the third as a guarantee that the French would stick to the deal.
According to reports, the release came after the KGB captured the relative of a Hezbollah leader, murdered him, and mailed parts of his body to the leader, with the message that other relatives would follow. This brutal response is believed to have pressured the kidnappers into freeing the diplomats. Though widely reported, the Soviet Union never officially confirmed the operation.
Voilà, alors les chaînes aux pieds. Pendant 8 mois l'an dernier, nous avons eu pour chaque nuit la chaîne aux pieds, en plus, bien sûr, de cette chaîne aux mains.
The umbrella gun assassination.
I remember walking into the cubicle and Georgy Markov was on the trolley, sitting up. He was hot, toxic, he had a rapid pulse rate.
Georgy Markov was a Bulgarian writer and dissident who often found his works censored by the communist government. Markov managed to defect from Bulgaria in 1969, eventually relocating to London, where he worked for the BBC World Service and continued to criticize the Bulgarian regime. On September 7, 1978, on his way to work at the BBC, Markov felt a sting on his leg.
Markov was waiting for a bus here on Waterloo Bridge when someone brushed past him. He felt a sharp stab in his leg, but at the time thought nothing more of it.
When he turned, a man was picking up an umbrella before walking off. Just days later, the writer passed away. Many years later, former KGB General Oleg Kalugin claimed that the assassination had been a joint operation between the KGB and the Belgian Secret Service.
This document allegedly shows the former Bulgarian leader paid $50,000 to have Markov killed. Other Bulgarian communist officials and Soviet KGB officials were implicated.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Operation Pandora.
Anybody who was a Soviet agent from 85 or earlier can never sleep comfortable again.
In 1992, Vasil Mitrokhin defected to the UK, bringing with him a trove of KGB documents, later known as the Mitrokhin Archive, which became public in 1999. Among its revelations was Operation Pandora, a KGB program in the 1970s aimed at stirring racial tensions in the U.S. The mission plans to send fake pamphlets and letters to various groups, including the Black Panthers, the Ku Klux Klan, and the Jewish Defense League, to provoke a race war. The KGB was also going to bomb a historically black college in New York City and blame the JDL. Fortunately, in the 1980s, U.S. authorities dismantled a KGB spy ring, or the plan could well have been enacted.
Though the FBI knew that the Soviets were intercepting U.S. communications, Mitrokhin's files provided vivid details of some of what the KGB actually got.
What other terrible KGB incidents did we miss? The group's involvement in Lithuania's January events in 1991? Attempting to overthrow the Soviet government in 1991? Or something else? Let us know below. Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.